I broke up with him so many times. And then he would just go to my parents' house and start begging, or sometimes he would start beeping outside.
Beeping outside? No for me. I would cut someone just for that.
And then
I would cut him up. Like, why are you beeping? Hi, Giselle. Welcome to Non-Traditional Headspace. Thank you for joining me today. I'm glad to have you in my podcast. This is going to be an interesting episode because it's a little bit nostalgic for me. You have been my friend for years now.
Yeah.
So this is going to be quite an interesting episode for me because we're going to be touching certain topics that are important to both of us.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be sharing a lot of personal stuff, which I appreciate. So to start off, Giselle, we're going to make a brief introduction about yourself. I have my way of seeing things, but what has been your journey from our high school years up to now? In a very brief way, describe how it has been since we know each other from high school to everything that happens until today.
Sure. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast. I'm really honored for that. For starters, it has been like a roller coaster. There were good times, there were bad times. Becoming a mother when I was 19 was certainly a life changer. Nowadays, I have 4 kids, but still, I am a person that is full of hopes and dreams. I still have a lot of goals that I feel that I have to accomplish. I don't know how much time it's going to take me, but I am sure that I am going to accomplish them eventually. But for now, I am caring mostly for my kids' beings. Ever since I am 19, it's been taking care of kids.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like a lot because for kids, it's not easy. And especially in these times where things keep getting harder and harder. I'm sure that it's not an easy task for anyone, right? Now, you told us right now that you became a teacher. And I remember this because both of us started with this experience, right? When we were young. I remember that we both started being teacher's assistants as our first work experience. That was funny. I continued to pursue teaching as well. And you did too. But you also keep doing it till this day, right?
Yes.
What inspired you to become a teacher or to keep being a teacher for so long? And about this career choice, what made you decide to stay in this career path?
Okay. If you remember, we were both teenagers.
Yeah.
16, 17. And I remember that I was a teacher assistant of one of my favorite teachers, a woman from whom I learned a lot, and she was an inspiration, I have to say.
Want to give her a shout out? Want to mention her last name at least?
Miss Maria Lorena Aguilar.
Great.
It was because of her that I had someone to follow. I always admired her. She was very professional, passionate about what she did. I don't know if she really enjoyed it or if she liked it, but at what she did, she was the best. I always thought, I want to be like her, no matter if I stay in teaching or in any other career, but I really wanted to be like her. Starting to work with kids, I discovered that I was really good at it. Kids really liked me, parents liked me. And I also started to develop a feeling where I wanted to help. And I remember that back then, there were some kids that had special needs. So I remember that I would separate them in a different table. And that was all my initiative. Nobody told me to do that. But I felt like I needed to help these kids. And in the very last bimester of that school year, the kids improved. It was a satisfaction for me to see that those kids were way better than how they started. So I thought, okay, this could be something.
Yeah.
But I wasn't studying in the university, so I was also trying to pursue a career. I wasn't able to study in the university because I didn't have the money. Not because there were not public universities, but because I didn't have my high school diploma and I needed it in order to the
register in a
registration
university.
process. So I remember that I finished that school year with the kids, and then I was fired because the school was always trying to give more chances to the newly grads.
Yes.
Then I started to work with adults, teaching English.
English as a
So
second language for adults.
exactly. So can you imagine going from kids that are 5, 6-year-olds to adults that are back then. I had some students that were even 50 years old and I was just 17.
Yeah. That's interesting that you were teaching at that age people who were so much older than you.
Yes.
Yeah.
It made me grow too because I learned from them too. Okay. Just by listening to their experiences. I think it helped me mature even more and even open my eyes to the adult world.
Yeah.
Because so far I was like still in the kids' life, not real responsibilities and you were with kids yet, but with adults, you start to hear their stories of success and how they managed to become an engineer, a doctor, whatever. And then you start to think like, hey, I could also be this.
Yeah.
I kept working as an English teacher. I knew I liked it and that I enjoyed it and could see myself doing this for the rest of my life, except for the payment, which is not the best, I have to say. It was always that, working with kids in schools or in English schools, teaching English to adults as a second language. Did take breaks from that. I decided I wanted to do something different. So I took a decision of working in a call center.
Yeah, I remember that now.
One of the worst and best experiences was in this case, even though I was not working with the clients face to face, but it also helped me understand the way people see us, especially Latinos, because you give customer service to American people.
Yeah.
And they would treat you really bad over the phone. They would humiliate you. They would blame you for not having a job. They would tell you that you're stealing their jobs. And basically in the call center, they teach you to let everyone treat you the way they want. Because
so basically you have no say because you have to get as many calls, I believe, right? If I'm not mistaken, you have to make as many calls as you can. And that's what they usually care for. Mostly how many calls you get, how many clients you are able to attend. They don't really care about what you're explaining right now, how they treat you or how you have to just let anyone on the phone call you any name.
Exactly. They call it emotional intelligence, but they basically, what they are doing is let them insult you because we need their money and you just have to pretend like you don't care. But in the end of the day, it does affect you because someone that is on the other side of the line is treating you like shit. And all you're doing here is working because you have kids, you have a family, you have bills to pay. You just end up dealing with that. After a while, it started to affect my mental health because I was not happy with it. I decided to quit after 3 years. And then I thought I was not going to go back ever again to a call center, at least not that.
And this was, Giselle, when call centers were first booming in Honduras. This is the first time that Honduras was really taking seriously opening call centers. And why did they choose Honduras? Because they were really happy about that. Yes, cheap labor. So basically what you have explained right now is really a transparent view about what happens when these countries like ours, Honduras, suffer these type of things. They do bring business opportunities, but for who, really? Because you were getting paid, you said, but at the same time you were being mistreated grossly by people. I'm sure that your payment was not the best payment either compared to what you were sacrificing. Or the mental health that you had to sacrifice on the way. I don't think it was enough.
No, the mental health, the time with your family because you had to work on holidays. Also, another thing that used to happen back then is that you work for commissions, right? So you were never able to be late because otherwise you would lose all the money you had worked for the whole month.
Wow.
So back then, I would probably, in my count, a $300 commission. Okay. And then for some reason, because I used to travel in public transportation, there was an accident and you got to work late. So they mark it as a late entry and you lose your money.
Okay.
They
Very
seem
nice.
to just take it away from you just like that.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds like it's quite accurate. I wouldn't doubt what you're saying.
Yes.
But
And
just to put the people who are listening, Giselle, in context, what years were these? So people understand, when did this happen?
This was, I believe, 2010 until 2013.
Okay. Yeah.
Because
So people understand when did it happen.
Yes. Also, the guy that was the president of the Congress back then, he had approved a law where you would get paid by the hour.
Yeah.
And so you had no benefits to anything. Therefore, you were simply just like a slave. If you can compare it to that, you were a slave, you had no rights. They would just tell you, oh, but you have Social Security and you have.
Really? Social Security in Honduras? Really?
So
yeah, we know what that is.
Context, as the Honduran law, we get paid double in June and we get paid double in December. So they wouldn't do that. What they would do is they would pay you back then 54 lempiras per hour. That would be like $2 and something.
Yeah. Nothing.
But part of those 52 lempiras were your bonus. So basically you got paid by the hour only like 30 something lempiras. And then the rest was compensation for the bonus you were supposed to get in June and in December. So you would end up getting paid $1.50 or $1.80 per hour back then. And still you had to let these people insult you and tell you that you were stealing their jobs. So I remember one time a person told me, you mother, you know what?
You can curse in the podcast.
So this woman told me because she still hadn't received her newspaper. The company I worked for was Newspaper California. There were several newspapers, right? I cannot start my day, she would say, without my newspaper, and it is not here. I need my coffee and my cigarette and I need my newspaper. Otherwise I cannot start my day. So I don't know, something must have happened to the driver that her paper was not there. And I'm sorry, I just sent a message to the driver that probably he missed you or there's a problem in the route, but you'll be getting it as soon as possible. And she said, you know what? You're stealing our jobs, you motherfucker Latinos. That's why our society is coming down. So I was so pissed. And I told her, you know what, ma'am? Would you work for $2 the hour? And she was like, you could hear immediately the change in her voice. And she, hell no. So I told her, that's what we get paid here in Honduras. Actually, you're not allowed to tell them that you're even in Honduras because they believe that you are in the US. So if they ask you, oh, we are located in Florida.
Vietnam.
Exactly. Anywhere but Honduras. Okay. No Latin America. So I told her, this is what we get paid. And you know what? I have 2 kids that I have to feed. I told her that. And all that was recorded. I don't know if they heard it or not, but I felt like the woman, after I told her that, I'll just wait for it. If not, I want credit. Because that's what the other asked for, credit. So you have to listen to a lot, just for a freaking newspaper, something like that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that she was probably going through something because it's not normal for someone to start ranting against someone else for a newspaper. So I'm sure she was going through her own stuff, but that doesn't allow her to mistreat you the way she was doing. And still, it's a shame because this still happens. We're talking about years, more than 10 years ago, but this still happens. This is what I think this is the perception, and I'm just going to say it. I really don't care. That's why I'm doing this podcast. So this is the perception that we have in Latin America of how a lot of people see us. And there's a lot of stereotypes that, of course, we also, as Latin American people who immigrate a lot due to the approachness that we have to the US, we also tend to give in for the stereotype. And it's a shame. Because of those stereotypes, people like that woman you described also have a perception. But all of this backs down to being humans and having feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because you wouldn't think that after you explain that to her, which you're not allowed to, like you said, the job didn't allow you to just tell somebody your situation. She changed her tone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting, right? Once people are able to listen a little bit further and put themselves in your shoes, then she reacted and she's, okay, I just fucked up. Yeah. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, you're talking a lot about your life journey already. And you already mentioned the fact that you are from Honduras, like I am as well. This is something that I want to hear from you because being from Honduras is already a challenge, I consider.
Yes.
Right?
I lived in survival mode on 21st.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny. I'll tell you a story in a bit. How do you think that being from Honduras has influenced your life opportunities and whether it played a role in the challenges you've faced and the choices that you have to make so far? The fact that you are from Honduras. Can you tell me about that?
Honduras has, sadly, a reputation of being a violent country. So whenever they hear Honduras, they are like, oh, it's like they see like you coming directly from hell.
Yeah.
So
I know.
Whatever that it is that you would like to apply or to do something for a business, like they'd have to do like an intensive research and they limit your opportunities even more, or simply just they expect that because you are from Honduras, you are a second-class person, okay, and that you are there to serve only. Yeah. And they would probably think that you're not capable of doing same things as a Japanese guy could do, a European guy could do, an American guy could do.
Would you say, Giselle, that you feel like they hold us at a different level?
Of course. Let me give you an example of that. There was this time when I received a call because of a newspaper that was missing. And then the woman started, oh, but you have a very good English, she told me. And I said, oh, ma'am, thank you. Are you from the US? Because she knew that call centers were overseas and perhaps in other occasions she had called, maybe someone with an Indian accent had answered.
I knew you were going to say Indian accent. I knew it because that's the cliche too. Most of them are from India.
Yeah,
they're millions. They're millions, of course. They pay less also over there. Yeah.
So I told her, oh, I am from Honduras. And she said, you know what? They say we Americans are ignorant, but she said, let me ask you about Honduras. Like, where is it located? So I was like,
hold on. So she started off by telling you, they say the Americans are ignorant. And then she proceeded to ask you, where is Honduras?
Exactly.
So she's just answering her own question.
She actually thought that we were like part of Africa or a part of Mexico.
Yeah. Okay.
But man, I still remember this call word by word because she made so many questions. In my mind, they were stupid. But I was not allowed to laugh at her because somehow there was still the teacher part in me. And I was like, you cannot laugh at what other people ask because they don't know. So I proceeded to say, no, ma'am, we are located in Central America. Central America? Yeah, ma'am, that's between Mexico and South America. Oh, and then she started, okay, but do you have like cars and things like that?
Oh my God.
She asked me if we had cars.
Of course, just being, it happens. Like to me, and this is real, what I'm going to say right now. You met the guy that I was dating, the American guy.
Right.
So my mother-in-law back then, she visited Honduras. And she brought toilet paper because she thought we didn't have toilet paper in Honduras.
So what were we supposed to use?
I guess leaves.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
When she asked me if we had cars and cell phones and computers, I was thought like, no one can be this ignorant. But then I proceeded to tell her like, yes, ma'am, we do have cars. We actually have Ferraris. Not like in a big quantity, I told her, but if you're rich, you can have one of those.
She was expecting for you to tell her, oh, no, we have one Ford model from the Woodies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have one, and the president owns one.
Yes. So I told her, and yes, ma'am, we have a great infrastructure. Actually, we are in San Pedro Sula, which is the biggest city of Honduras. I remember telling her all that. This is the industrial city. This is where the economy moves mostly. We have high buildings. Everything is growing here.
You were trying to sell Honduras to her.
Yes. And she told me, like, what other attractions do you have? Perhaps she thought we lived in a jungle, or I don't know what her perception of Honduras was.
Probably.
So I told her, oh, we have very beautiful places that you can visit. There's the island of Roatán, and she was on her computer. So she Googled Roatán and she found out that it was a very beautiful island. She's like, oh, really? And she said, and what is your currency? And I told her, oh, our currency is lempira. And she would say, like, how much is for $1? Back then, I don't recall. I think it was like 18 lempiras.
18 maybe. Yeah, 18, yes.
So I told her, with $100, you and your family can do a lot of stuff here. And she was like, oh, but here it says that you are the most violent country in the world. And I was like, no, that's not true. Yes, we are.
It was, but there's a story behind that. Why did they come up with that number? We can talk about that. But you know what? Now that you are explaining the whole story, I'm going to stop judging the woman. But I think then it became an interesting conversation because she was interested about knowing more. Yeah. She broke the stereotype also about being the ignorant American.
And I felt I was in the obligation of stepping for a country and not have this woman stay with this perception of who we actually are, because it was not fair. I told her about it. All the wonderful things we have here are way more than the bad things that the news and media sell. I have to tell you, back then, the calls were supposed to be just 1 minute or 2 minutes. That conversation went on for 25 minutes.
So you got paid more.
I got a commission because I was actually making a save because she was going to cancel her subscriptions. My duty there was to retain the customer from canceling.
You did.
I
nice.
Did. Yes.
Nice. And in the way
having a better story.
Yeah. And you educated her a little bit, and now she changed her perception, which is, I think, something that we have to keep doing all the time. That's a nonstop thing. Yeah. Otherwise, if we let the media, like you say, which is managed on purpose to do that, right? In our country situation, it is done on purpose to keep portraying only the negative stuff, because it benefits certain groups. So I think it's an ongoing thing that we all have to do as Hondurans to portray our country differently.
Exactly.
Nice. How do you think, of course, walking through these challenges and experiences that you had, you mentioned also about having to drop out of the university. That must have not been easy, right? Because if you think about it, if I think about it now also, I would have thought, oh, that's crashing a little bit my dreams, right? Having to drop out of university. So how do you think this has affected you? And this had to do a lot also with the coming of your first son, right?
Yes, it did. I was working in one of the best schools, one of the most expensive. I was in the university and I found out I was pregnant. So I was a teacher assistant. So I had to tell her that I was pregnant because she would ask me to clean shelves from top to bottom. So I had to step on tables and chairs. I didn't want to do it because I could fall down and I could lose my baby. So when I told her that I was pregnant, I'm not going to say if she took it well or not. I don't know. But all I can tell you is that the next day they called me to the office and I was fired.
Whoa. No.
I was fired just because I was pregnant and I was not going to be a good example for the students.
Oh my God.
That was the reason.
I would be so pissed.
Back then, of course, I ended up crying because I used to pay my own studies. I was studying in a private university, paid for my tuition myself. So when they fired me, I had to decide if I was going to use the indemnification money to continue school or for my baby. So I had to drop out because of that. And I was not able to be hired again. I did go to another interview, but when I told them that I was pregnant, they don't hire you if they know you're pregnant.
Yeah.
Because then the company has to run with all these expenses.
They see you as a liability, right?
Exactly.
They see you as a liability.
It was a very rough time. I dropped out of school. I had nowhere else to go. Yes, I was still living with my parents, but the situation was not very good, I have to say. I ended up living with my boyfriend in a town.
Which was the baby's dad, just to put it
Yes,
in context
the
also,
first
just so
baby.
people don't think that you ran out with another guy.
It was the baby's dad. So he told me like, hey, you know what? My dad lives somewhere. So he's willing to receive us there and I can work there. And I said, okay, sure. Let's go. So we went there and things didn't go well either. But then my dad offered me help again.
Mhm.
So I came back to San Pedro and my dad offered to pay for the child's birth, all the expenses. And that's what we did. I came back, baby was born, and then I started to work again in a school. But then we started to have issues with my ex because he didn't want to stay here in San Pedro. He wanted to go back to where his parents were. And so I ended up quitting my job and taking my child to this place where he was from. Then,
Sorry to interrupt you, but then you were trying to make the relationship work,
I was
right?
trying to.
And you
because
were
he had
also
cheated
doing
on
it
me.
for your baby. You were
Yeah.
also doing it for your baby because at this point, you wanted your baby to have his dad
Exactly.
close to him. So you decided to, once again, sacrifice a little bit of your intentions and dreams to pursue
a family, correct. So I moved with him to this other place. And
Hold on, you mentioned something right now. I interrupted you, and he said he cheated.
Yes.
Okay,
He
interesting.
cheated on me when I was 7 months pregnant.
The fuck, man? Cut his dick.
Yes. It was a very hard time for me because I was extremely far away from home. I had no one else there. And I would see him with this other girl because they wouldn't
What?
hide. So he saw me crying. He saw me suffer. He saw me miserable and he still wouldn't care. But somehow it was like, I don't know if it was pride or embarrassment. I don't know if I was ashamed to ask my parents for help or coming back feeling like defeated. So I just went through all that by myself.
But I totally get it, Giselle, because maybe I had not had a baby or anything, but I've been in circumstances that I also had to go back to my parents at some point. And that's the worst experience ever. Having to go back and ask for help because you want to prove that you're independent. So I understand what you just said.
I tried to make the relationship work, as I said, and tried to give my baby a family, get pregnant for a second time. This time I had a girl. And I thought maybe this time it was going to be different, but he kept on cheating on me while I was pregnant of my second daughter.
Yeah.
So I ended up realizing that he didn't love me at all.
Oh, of course not. If he was doing that, of course not.
Back then I had the illusion that it could work, that perhaps if he saw that we had like the perfect family, a boy, a girl, and I thought it was going to be better. But no, there was probably someone always better than me that he would be looking after. I decided to leave him.
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt you here because you cannot keep saying something like that, Giselle. You cannot say someone was looking for someone better than you. I don't think there's someone better than you for him. The guy is an asshole. He probably continue being an asshole, right? I don't know if you're in touch with him, but he's probably an asshole still. So I don't think he could ever find someone better than you. He was just looking for something that he will never find because he's the asshole. So just to clarify that.
Back then, the thing is that when they cheat on you, they take away all of your, how can I say,
self-esteem.
Self-esteem. And you start to feel like you're not enough for that person. Because why in hell would they look outside what they have at home? He had a lovely family. He had a caring, not wife, we lived together. So
a committed wife, a committed partner, because you didn't cheat on him. So that's a betrayal, right?
And you know how I found out that he was cheating on me is because his parents owned a school. And I remember we lived a block away from that place. So he would stay until late because he was giving English courses to adults too. So one day I decided to stay in the backyard and just see what was going on. And then I saw him walking to the dark part of the backyard with this woman. They were like playing and they kissed. And so I came out of it.
Out of nowhere.
Behind the bush. I have to say, I was behind the bush and I said, so that's why you're treating me the way you are. So the woman was simply just like scared, like she said, had seen a ghost. So she went back inside to the building. And
Do you think she knew that you existed?
of course she did. They all knew me because he is the son of the owners of the school. So they know them in the place. They know all his family. They knew my son because he would stay in the school. He was a baby, but he would be there. The nanny was taking care of him in the school. So of course they knew who I was. And she knew that he had a partner. He treated me very bad. He told me like, I want you to leave now from here because this is my school and you have nothing to here. So I said, of course I'm going to leave. So I went back home, I cried, and that was it. And then after having my second child, I don't know why I decided that I wanted to check his email. He never told me his password. So he told me that his password was numbers and letters, right? For some reason, I didn't believe him. So I typed only the numbers, and it happened to be that his password was his ID number, which I knew.
Oh my God, so stupid. Okay.
Yes. And guess what? He was cheating on me with one student.
Oh, okay. He's a perpetual cheater.
So the thing is that he was what? 24, 25, and she was 14.
Oh my God, underage? Oh my God, that is really effed up.
That I said like, you know what? This is it. We broke up. We broke up over the phone. And he was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, we should break up. He didn't even try.
Of course not.
Or anything.
The guy, you know what? He's a pedophile also. I know it sounds hard to say. If he was dating a 14-year-old, what other name may we give him? So of course he's not going to show any emotions. He has other issues then.
Yes. Again, I was miserable. I was suffering because I thought that he was at least going to say something because we had 2 kids. The youngest one was just 6 months. And I decided to stay alone with my parents. I was only focused on work. Back then, I was already 21. I had a job that I really liked. And for some reason, after having my second child, is when my body got better. Years I was thin and good looking, and people wouldn't even believe that I had 2 kids. So I was working again in a very prestigious English school, again, teaching English to adults. And life started to seem better until I met the devil here.
Yeah. And this is where we start the next segment, which is relationships and self-values. Go ahead, because this is where we start then with your experiences with relationships. Now, the parent of your first 2 children was a very traumatic experience for what I can hear. And then you started growing up because now you're 21, you're older, you're starting to mature a little bit more. What happened after that?
Okay, so after breaking up, I decided to stay alone for as long or as much as I could. But I knew that men would probably want to be with me just for sex. Because they knew
Why do you think so?
Because I was young, I was good looking, I had 2 kids, so they would see no responsibility and not take me seriously and just look for a one-night stand or 2. So,
but is this something you believe, or did you really experience this at some point? Like whenever you were trying to go on dates?
I met a couple of jerks. Like one of them once asked me to go out with him. So we went out for coffee. I remember it was a Dunkin' Donuts. So the guy seemed very nice. I actually met him because I was looking for an apartment where to move with my kids. So he was a realtor. I thought I don't know how to call it. I was not looking for a relationship or anything like that. The thing is that the dude was like, hey, you know what? Why don't we instead go to my apartment and we have a good time? Just out of nowhere.
Okay.
And I was like, what makes you think that is what I want? If you ask me for a coffee, don't think that just for a coffee, I'm going to get laid with you. Simple as that.
And not a Dunkin' Donuts coffee. Hell no.
And I never saw him again. We never closed any deal because that's not what I was looking for. And as I tell you, I was somehow prepared for that kind of men, for meeting that kind of men eventually in my life.
But you really think it had to do with the fact that he knew that you were a single mom? Or
Yes,
do you
definitely.
think it's simply because I think, of course, I also have a sister that has been a single mom.
Mhm.
So I understand that. But I also feel like for women in Latin America in general, men can be really assholes when it comes to just approaching women in general.
Yes.
I'm not sure if we are provoking it too as women sometimes because we don't also...
Like we ask for it?
Well, no. We sexualize ourselves sometimes too. I don't do it. You don't do it, but I'm talking about other women. They use their bodies to provoke men and stuff like that. So I think in some way they feel like they can approach us this way, like they deep cold-handed just told you, let's go have sex somewhere.
Yes.
But I think it has to do with this a little bit. And of course, in your case, he was trying to rent you an apartment. So he knew a little bit of your background. So you do think it had to do with him knowing that you were a single mom? Okay.
Of course, he felt like it was going to be an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Then
in and out. That's it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then a couple of months later, I met another guy that was a friend of another friend. So my friend introduced us. He was a lawyer. And I just knew that he was my friend's friend. So I thought that he was going to be nice, an educated person or something like that. Someone that you could at least talk to anytime. So I thought that, okay, he seems to be, because he's a lawyer. So my dad is a lawyer. So I thought, okay, I was not looking for a relationship either. I was just looking. If he invites me to have coffee right there and I accept, I will do it because he's my friend's friend. That was the original plan. I'm not looking for a relationship. But the thing is that this idiot told me like, hey, let's go have sex. Like, you already have 2 kids. What do you have to lose? That's what he told me.
So that one was even more blunt.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it was like, I can tell you what I told him in Spanish.
Yeah.
I told him, maje, vos esos pendejo.
Yeah, which I'm going to translate that for the other people. Like, that's being men, you're like stupid. You're really stupid.
Yes.
You know, or it's like saying your mama dropped you when you were little. What's wrong with you?
So I ended up telling my friend, hey, you know what? This dude told me this. And my friend wanted to laugh. Then he said, this Daniel is so stupid. My friend couldn't believe it that he had told me that. And I was like, you know what? I don't ever want to see this idiot. And if we ever hang out, because we used to hang out in groups, like 4 or 6 people always. And sometimes he was there. So I was like, I don't want to see him ever again. So if we ever go out and he's going out, I'm coming with you guys. And I never saw him again. Then I met this other guy.
And hold on, but that kind of sucks to be in that situation, because then that situation makes everything else awkward with the group of friends, right?
Yes.
It's not nice because now you cannot hang as freely as you would like to with the rest of the group of friends without having either knowing a little bit of what happened or just bumping into this person every now and then. So it's all awkward, right?
In the end, I ended up not hanging out with all of them ever again. I didn't really even care that much. Anyways, I was busy with work and all my kids, so I didn't have time to hang out anymore. So then I met this other guy. Again, he was married with 1 child and he fell in love with me and blah, blah, blah. And I said, nah, I already know the story. I know what he wants. So I said, hey, you know what? I'm not into this. So we ended up being friends only.
Okay.
Then another guy, he was my student. Most of the guys I have met, they have been my students.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Is that a pattern? Is that a pattern?
I believe so, because that's the way I have met these people. So this other guy, he was the nicest guy ever, but he had gotten married 2 months before I met him. I can tell you, he did fall in love with me.
Okay.
But deep in my heart, I knew that I couldn't do that because I was not going to hurt another woman. I was starting to feel things for him because, as I said, he was very caring. But then I told him, like, hey, you know what? This cannot happen. You have a wife, and I wouldn't like her to suffer or go through the same things I went through. And he was like, yes, miss, I understand. Well, things that he ended up.
How old was he? And how old were you?
He wasn't that old. He was like 28 and I was 22.
Oh, okay.
Like that.
Not a big difference. Yeah. Not
No,
a big
no.
age gap. Okay.
That was the thing with him. And then I finally met the one.
The one.
Yes, the one.
Okay. Or no, not the one, that one, you mean? Because is he the one? Are you trying to get back with him?
No.
No? Then he's that one. Like that one that really marked you in some way. Okay.
He did. No, in so many ways. He marked me in so many ways, good and bad.
Okay.
At this point, I had been alone, single, for a year and a half. I was happy. I was happy with my kids, my job. One thing that I didn't mention is that when my second daughter was 6 months old, there was a family discussion one day because of my sister, and my dad stopped talking to me.
I remember that.
That was June 2009. And just for you to know, he started to talk to me again in 2019.
10 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So it was 10 years without having contact with my dad, even though we were in the same place, in the same house. That is probably one of the reasons I went through all the things that I am about to tell you.
Okay.
Not talking to my dad led to a situation where I started to do things by myself, like going to work. My boss, when back then he used to give me a ride to work, I started to look for ways to survive, basically.
Yes.
I met this guy. He was warm. He was caring, everything you can imagine.
Charming.
Extremely. But he was married.
Okay.
He was married. And again, he was my student.
Before you keep talking about this, now, I have this for us to discuss here. The cycle of this, of seeking certain type of validation because you felt like all these people that have hurt you, because you were repeatedly hurt in your quest to find a better relationship and at some point find someone that could also be a good father to your children as well. Now, do you think these are underlying causes of this pattern that I think I have identified today, which is you dating your students? Do you think it has to do something about all of these things that you have been going through since back then? Do you think it influenced in some way? Or even the relationship with your dad not being present, it helped you to just look for something somewhere else?
Okay.
Or what do you think?
Perhaps the reason for dating students was because that was the part of my life where I was really getting in contact with adults. I was teaching English. I didn't have any other contact with adults. My life was just work and the kids.
Yeah, you spend most of your time at work. So you related with other people mostly at work.
Exactly.
So this is why. Okay.
So I never dated like my coworkers because I thought, no. But then students, you can date students because they simply just drop out and then you keep in touch with them and it doesn't affect anything in your job. But if you date a coworker, then things can get messy. So I always avoided that. So I met this guy. He was my student, 7 years older than me. All the things that is a narcissist. But I wasn't able to identify that until
at the beginning. Yeah.
Yes. It took me like 9 or 10 years to realize that.
Okay. So you started dating him when you were 22. And when did you finally, we're talking about recent.
Back then, the term narcissist was not very commonly used. Actually, nobody would talk about narcissism.
Yeah.
I started to identify things in him when I started to hear about narcissism. And this is him.
The perfect description. Yeah.
Exactly. Because there was the love bombing. There was all this flattering. He would start, oh, is that you're so smart? Is that you're so cool? You're so special. I thought he's one of the rest. But I was
You
thinking,
started doubting, is this real or
exactly. The very first days, I was like, yeah, okay, I will let him say all this and I will hang out with him. And for me, it wasn't serious. If it ended 1 month later, I knew it. I was not going to be hurt because I knew the game already. The thing is that it started to get real. And the reason why it started to get real was because he started to lie about his wife. I knew he was married. He had 2 kids and all that stuff. I didn't want to get into that. But then he started to show a part of him where he was apparently suffering. For some reason, I felt empathy and I thought he was actually suffering. And he would tell me that his wife cheated on him and that his wife was like the devil, literally.
So he was the victim.
According to him, he was the victim all time. Like all the time. And it was like, oh my God, what a terrible woman this is. But he played another card. He trained one of his subordinates, literally, to always say yes to what he was saying. In what way? For example, he would say, my wife is a bad woman. And then his subordinate would say, hey, you should see that woman is like the worst. So I had 2 opinions against the same woman. So I thought maybe this is true. This woman is the bad one here. He would tell me things like, oh, is that I bought 2 cars, one for me and one for her. And she, without telling me, sold her car and she kept the money. In my mind, it was like, that's not okay. Like, poor guy, he busts his ass off all day and she just does that. Or then he would come with stories like, I got a flat tire this morning and she was driving her car and she saw me and she didn't even help me. So he portrayed her like, what a terrible.
The worst.
And exactly. And then he told me that because they live outside area of San Pedro near La Lima. And then in those places, you will find a lot of these hotels that are especially for love.
Yeah, motels. Motels that for us, it's not the same motel like low budget in the US or anything. It's like really just going there for sex. Yeah.
You pay a certain amount of money and you are there 4 hours. They let you stay there 4 hours only. So one day he came with the story that he was passing by a motel and that she was coming out of the motel.
Okay. So she was also cheating on him according to his story. Okay.
Exactly. And again, his subordinate would come to me saying the same things like, hey, you know what? This poor guy, he's so devastated because his wife is doing all these bad things to him. He wouldn't do it, of course, in front of him. He would wait like for the time when I was alone, waiting for the rest of the people to come or when the rest of the people had left the classroom. So I was like, God, poor guy.
You know what? It sounds a lot like a telenovela. And you know which one, right? It sounds Ugly Betty.
Yes.
Betty La Fea. Like the guy had his like colleague that was always like his wingman all the time.
Exactly.
His wingman and he was confirming everything to you. So, okay. He was just giving you a story, feeding you stories.
And also one thing that he managed to do, I still don't know how, but he managed to meet every single member of my family. And I didn't get to know any of his family members. So he told me that his mother was a neurosurgeon.
Okay.
And that his dad was an ex-military officer with a high rank and that he would drive a Toyota Hilux. I had no reason to doubt about anything he told me regarding that part of his life because he had a very good position in the company where he worked. He seemed to be a very successful man. So when Denisse came and told me like, hey, Giselle, you know what? My dad just bought $1 million house and my dad is an astronaut. Like, why would I believe you?
Because it's not true.
And he would tell me that they would live in one of the most expensive neighborhoods of San Pedro Sula.
Okay.
I was like, okay, it didn't seem precious to me because for some reason we at school, we are used to see people that have money, right?
Yeah.
It's not that you and I were rich, but we met good people, educated people. So for me, it was Normal. Exactly. My day-to-day life. But then after him telling me all these stories and he met my aunt, my mom, my dad, he told me that he was in love with me and all that. So for some reason, I decided to give him a chance. And we began a relationship. The thing is that probably a week or two after we had started dating, or after I had accepted to become his mistress.
Let's call it like the segment, the other woman. You became the other woman.
Yes.
Because mistress sounds...
Without me even knowing I was actually becoming the other woman, I have to say. Because one day he came to my parents' house and he seemed to be like very sad and very preoccupied. And you could see his face like if he was hurt from his feelings or something. I was like, what's going on? What's happening to you? And he told me, my love, I am going to be a dad again.
What?
Which is why I was pregnant with a third, but wait for it.
With a third child?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm telling you that I became the other woman without me even noting it or wanting it. I don't know. The thing is that after telling me that, he said, but you know what? That baby is not mine.
Okay. So he told you he was not the father of the... Okay.
So hearing all these stories from months ago that he had seen his wife coming out of a motel and that she didn't treat him right and all this stuff. And then coming to me, telling me that his wife was pregnant and the child was not his. And then again, his subordinate approached me one day before the English class and she was like, my goodness, poor of this guy, his wife is pregnant and the child's not his. So he made all this drama.
So this guy, this subordinate guy or whoever he is, I would hate him so much at this point. Was he doing it all on purpose or was he also a victim of the other guy's stories?
Yes, he probably knew. How can I say it? I am sure he didn't do it with that intention, but that my ex would probably come to him and tell him like, hey, please help me with her. Please support the story that I just told her, or make me look like the good one, make me look like the victim.
So he knew and he was playing a role. So yeah, I would hate him. Totally.
So when I started to hear all that, I said, okay, but if his wife is cheating on him, then there is nothing left in that marriage. So I thought that then there wouldn't be anything wrong if I started to...
You really thought so, but why didn't he consider divorcing his wife?
Yeah, we talked about that. And the thing is that he said that he was going to wait for the baby to be born to have a DNA test.
Okay, he kept his story. He was sticking to that storyline and he was not letting go.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I totally believed it because he would spend more time with me than at home. He would basically just go home just to sleep. We even traveled to Guatemala for a weekend twice. And then I even started to doubt, is this woman really pregnant? I wouldn't believe that her husband would leave her. There could be any emergency. So I even started to doubt if the pregnancy story was true. There was always something in my heart that made me doubt what he said. But then he was so convincing, or he would distract the attention from that, or whenever you wanted to talk about the topic, he would answer something else or bring up something else. The things that he was always distracting you from the main topic. I saw that it was not important for him. I just let it go. Then he told me that he was going to travel to El Salvador for one day. He would leave in the morning and then come back in the afternoon. Guess what? That day she was having her C-section.
So he made up a story that he was going for a business trip and his wife was giving birth to the child.
Yes.
That day. Wow. Wow.
And the thing that the hospital was just a couple of blocks away from my parents' house. I was passing by and I saw his car there and I saw him outside the hospital. And
my goodness. So, you know, that the truth always comes to...
Yes. And then I was believing all these stories, like the DNA stuff. And I was like, and then he said, you know what? I don't want this child, but this is the child that I will have to love the most. It's like,
why?
Maybe he felt guilty for denying his son.
Of course.
But he would always tell me that.
And being absent because he was with you most of the time. So he had been absent during the entire pregnancy and everything.
And then I remember that the boy was born on December 1st. And then we had Christmas vacation. So I wouldn't see him for a couple of weeks or days because it's family time. So he would always be sending me pictures of him and the baby. The baby looks just like him.
Yeah, so typically, like, you can't deny the baby because then it looks just like him. Yeah.
Exactly. So I was like, you know what? That child is actually yours. You lied to me, fucking your wife.
Yes.
And then...
But hold on, Giselle, because all of this is so hard for me because I don't think I could have believed someone so blindly for so long when all of this, you say that they were not so obvious, but for me, I would have thought they were obvious, the red flags. I want to understand what made you be so blindly, I don't know if it was in love with him or just to believe him all the time and not trying to follow your gut, your instinct, because sometimes we just have this instinct of, okay, I want to know a little bit more. Like you said, I want to know more about his family. What kept you from going there and just believing and trusting this person so blindly, especially after all that you have been through before? I wouldn't trust anyone.
He always had a perfect excuse, a reason of why he did what he did. And I also have to tell you that when I saw that the baby was born and the baby looked just like him, I decided to end that relationship. But he wouldn't let me go. He told me that I was the woman that he loved and that we were going to be together. And he always begged me for time because he was going to leave his wife. And he was like, please wait for me. I promise you we will live together and I am going to honor you. But please don't leave me. I broke up with him so many times. And then he would just go to my parents' house and start begging, or sometimes he would start beeping outside.
Beeping outside? No for me. I would cut someone just for that.
And then
I would cut him up. Like, why are you beeping? Yeah.
And then my mom was like, Giselle, go out and talk to that man. And I was like, no, mom, I don't want to see him.